This is CBC Vancouver News.
We need to deliver urgently to continue to earn that trust from British Columbians every single day.
A new Premier, David Eby, is now leading BC, and with it, some big expectations. Also,
so many people are waiting here, and we're all panicking.
Frustrations as people trying to get to India say they can't wait any longer for their visas. And
just overnight, it took on water and sunk.
Cleaning up False Creek and the slow, expensive push to remove abandoned boats. Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Michelle Ghoussoub. BC has a new leader. David Eby is our 37th Premier. The lawyer and former activist was officially sworn in this morning at a ceremony centered in Indigenous culture. As Mira Baines reports, Eby says he's eager to face the challenges ahead, including on housing, affordability, and public safety.
The swearing-in ceremony was steeped in Musqueam culture with special songs and a blanket ceremony.
It's so heartwarming and exciting for First Nations, not just Musqueam.
Musqueam Chief Wayne Sparrow says hosting the swearing-in is an historic first. Among the 400 people there, now former Premier John Horgan and several local mayors.
When we formed government, I turned to the tallest person I could find, and I piled on top of his shoulders even more challenges for him to tackle.
I, David Robert Patrick Eby.
After taking his oath of office, Premier David Eby praised his predecessor.
I'm not as tall as I look, because I'm standing on the shoulders of John Horgan.
Eby says his shoes given to him by his late father give him strength, and he thanked his wife and 2 young children for their love and support. As for his plans for BC, tackling crime is high on the list.
This weekend, we'll announce how we're going to go after the issue of public safety.
Eby says help is also on the way for people dealing with soaring costs. A one-time $100 credit for BC Hydro customers is coming, as is a new affordability credit for low and middle income earners, up to $164 per adult and $41 per child. Eby also plans to move on housing next week.
You're going to see our government hit the ground running on Monday with new bills related to housing. Opening up housing that should be available right now for rent but isn't.
Premier Eby is making no apologies for acting fast on pressing issues. He says his team has 2 years until the next election to make headway. And he has just 4 days to take action in the BC legislature before the session ends until February. Mira Baines, CBC News, Vancouver.
As you heard, Eby credits much of his success to his family. And those close to him say they're not surprised by his rise to power. As Leanne Young reports, the lawyer with activist roots has always had a political streak.
I can remember him he was probably 13, 14 years old, going to the circus to start a protest there.
It's a memory that sticks with Patrick Eby, his eldest brother David fighting against animal abuse as a teen. Compassion and ambition, says Eby, are innate in his brother.
In high school, he wanted to be student council president. He ran an election, and he won that. So he was, from the early days, he was always driven.
David Eby graduated from law at Dalhousie University. In the early 2000s, he moved to BC. As a lawyer with the Pivot Legal Society, he advocated for people living on the downtown east side.
The Charter guarantees a right of freedom from unreasonable search, and this search doesn't sound to be reasonable at all.
And in the lead up to the 2010 Olympics, became a leading figure against the Games.
We're looking at $1 billion security bill for the Olympics.
His activism led him to the BC Civil Liberties Association, fighting for police accountability. Colleagues say, even as the executive director, he never shied away from frontline work.
He picked for himself the very smallest office at the top of the stairs, and that's because he wanted to be able to be the first point of contact for people who came into the office.
Pastine isn't surprised Eby dove into politics. She says he's always sought big solutions to the problems he saw. Eby toppled Christy Clark for a seat in 2013 and was named Attorney General when the NDP formed government and was handed one major file after another from ICBC.
This is quite simply a financial dumpster fire.
To cracking down on money laundering at casinos, to most recently housing. Political adversaries, while respectful of Eby's intellect, paint a different picture of the new premier's ambitions.
Sometimes David Eby comes across as a little more arrogant than confident.
DeYoung argues Eby has failed on his two main files, making housing affordable and public safety.
The degree to which British Columbians feel less safe today than they did 5 years ago is, I think, palpable.
Eby has said those are some of his top priorities as premier. Leanne Young, CBC News, Vancouver.
Some Canadians are desperately hoping they will be able to travel this holiday season. They plan to visit family and friends in India, but they can't leave home without a visa. Many have been waiting for weeks. And as Lindsay Duncombe shows us, despite the long lines, Indian officials deny there's a problem.
The line started at 3 a.m. Amneet Athwal got here first. She needs her mother's passport and visa to India fast.
I have my flight on Monday. I have to be at the airport at 2 o'clock on Monday.
They sent in the paperwork 7 weeks ago.
So many people are waiting here, and we're all panicking.
Arminder Bajwa's sister is getting married in Punjab.
I spent $8,000 on tickets, and how stressful that test situation, inflation and everything, $8,000. 4 people, and all 4 passports are here.
In Brampton, Ontario, similar line, colder temperatures.
It feels horrible. I don't feel like I'm living in Canada.
This is India's busiest travel season. COVID stopped Canadians' trips for years. Now there's a rush. Once someone born in India becomes a Canadian citizen, they need a visa to return. It used to be you could get visas online, but e-visas were suspended during COVID. They're back for 156 countries, but not Canada.
We don't get any e-visa to enter Canada either.
The Indian High Commissioner Designate to Canada acknowledges an increase in submissions and says resources are strained, but denies delays.
From our point of view, situation looks fine, as I have already detailed to you from the timeline perspective. We never advise people to buy travel tickets before they get the visa.
The line can get intense.
There was a guy, he didn't have an appointment. He tried to enter, and when I stopped him, he pushed me. I told him not to do that, but he put his hands on me. Then I had to call police.
He tells people to make appointments online, but when we looked, there aren't any available. Lindsay Duncombe, CBC News, Surrey, BC.
After months of shortages of children's pain medication, relief is in sight from Health Canada. The drugs are set to arrive next week, but that's little comfort to those desperately looking right now. As our Premji reports, there are things parents can do.
It's been very stressful.
Panic settled in fast for new mom Shannon Donaghy when 10-month-old Owen came down with pneumonia recently.
You just don't know what to think. You don't know what you can do. You fear for your child's life. I mean, especially at such a young age.
And with the continued shortage of children's medication on the shelves of pharmacies, she felt her options were slim.
Trying to track it down was nearest to impossible.
But pharmacists say a lot of parents don't realize there are safe workarounds.
I just explained to them what they can do with the adult doses to make sure that this child can get the medication. For kids maybe under 2 who probably can't really have an oral, like a tablet, or can't really swallow a tablet, you can certainly get it compounded.
But Wigston has one warning. You can't stockpile compounded medication, nor should you.
The expiry dates on them are typically in the matter of weeks instead of months to years like standard products.
And don't try to figure it out alone.
Unless you are 100% sure, just talk with the pharmacist.
While helpful advice, it's still cold comfort for some parents, like this soon-to-be mom just 2 weeks from her due date.
It's concerning for us, and I know that even newborns would need medication with the ongoing virus in the air. It's a lot of mental pressure as well as, emotions.
But Wigston adds while we wait for the stock from Health Canada,
There's options, and you don't have to go without.
and when that stock comes,
Don't revert back to the toilet paper incident, I suppose, is where my head goes with that.
more medication is on the way, according to Health Canada, expected to start hitting store shelves by the end of next week. Zara Premji, CBC News, New Westminster.
Now to more on a developing situation out of Merritt, where this morning gunfire erupted for a second time this week. Merritt RCMP were called after shots were fired at a home on Priest Avenue around 6 a.m. A stolen Dodge Ram was seen tearing away from the scene. No arrests have been made, but officers say some suspects have been identified and that the shooting was not random. Mayor Michael Getz tells CBC there is a heavy police presence on the city's Nicola Avenue. RCMP have told Getz the incident is related to the two previous shootings.
It's where our fire hall is. There's residents all around it. So I know some residents have been told, get ready to leave if you have to leave. It is concerning. People are rightfully so upset. This does not happen here. This is a fairly small, quiet city. We've never had anything like this happen. It's the recklessness that has people upset. I mean, we've got kids going to school. We've got people going about their daily lives. And you've got this going on.
A section of a main street was closed down for hours earlier this evening as police in tactical gear with long rifles scoped out a home on Nicola Avenue. Residents in the area say they had police stationed in their own backyards.
Just thinking, it'd be quite entertaining to watch the cops finally just get these guys and get them the hell out of our neighborhood.
Yeah. Well, that's the way we look at this, is although it's a little bit of an inconvenience for everybody at this point, but we all need to do our part in letting this stuff happen so that it can be taken off the streets.
Earlier this week, more than 100 rounds were fired at 3 locations in and around Merritt. A pastor in Chilliwack has been found liable for holding a worship service despite the provincial COVID-19 restrictions that were in place at the time. The provincial court decision found that Free Reformed Church pastor John Koopman could be considered a host of the service, despite the fact that he may not have been the one who organized it. Koopman led a worship service 2 days after Dr. Bonnie Henry issued an order banning people from organizing or hosting various events. The ruling could impact similar cases. The legislation behind the mandates is currently being challenged at all 3 levels of BC courts. Well, if you've walked, biked, or sailed through False Creek, you know there are plenty of boats that are abandoned. Some of them are even falling apart. Police and federal officials are working to remove them, but efforts are slow-going and costly. More now from John Hernandez on the water.
You might not notice it from the shore, but False Creek is littered with derelict boats above and below.
It's been here for 6-8 months. So you can really see the outline there now.
Last week, this tugboat went down.
Overnight, it took on water and sunk. That does happen. Boat develops a flaw in the hull and it starts taking on water, which brings it lower in the water.
Just a few meters away, this shell of a yacht has been anchored for months. Police suspect it's a hangout spot. Marine Unit Officer Darren McDougall is tasked with trying to find the owners of dozens of boats that are illegally moored here.
Most of these boats don't have insurance, so there's no incentive for the people to register it in their name. So for us to track down who the actual owner of the boat is becomes quite difficult.
Just a handful of the vessels here are permitted, many abandoned, others occupied and falling apart.
We do have one person that is constantly bringing bikes to their boat, getting the proper resources, the mental health outreach, the housing outreach and all that to come out and engage is our next step.
This year, Transport Canada, which has jurisdiction over False Creek, has issued dozens of notices to boat owners telling them to move. About a dozen vessels have been confiscated after being deemed to be polluting the water and posing a public safety risk.
If all of a sudden you have 15 or 20 or 30 of those vessels, now they're really kind of in the way for other boaters that generally want to do the right thing.
Those who don't follow the rules can face stiff fines.
That can be up to $50,000 for an individual and it can be $250,000 for a corporation.
Consequences that have had little sway on these waters as more and more boats drop their last anchor. John Hernandez, CBC News, Vancouver.
People in BC will have a harder time finding a Christmas tree this year, but don't blame the Grinch. Many Christmas tree growers are reporting a shortage across the province. The BC Christmas Tree Association says drought will leave lots with fewer firs than years past. But it's not just our changing climate causing the shortage. Fewer young farmers are getting into the business. And the shortage has some tree producers calling for government support to grow the industry.
Every year it seems to get a bit worse, and even in other parts where Christmas trees are grown, like Oregon and Washington, they're also experiencing the same shortfall of trees. So it's an issue we have to address in the province. We have to encourage more growers, more young people to get into growing trees. We have the land, we just have to have the political will and the means to do so.
Christmas tree production is big business across the country. Nationally, almost 30,000 hectares were dedicated to Christmas tree production in 2011, and Canada exports about 49% of the Christmas trees we grow. Crews near Agassiz are working to keep 2 wildfires under control, and an evacuation alert has been issued for some rural properties. The evacuation alert was first issued last night for about a dozen properties in the district of Kent after a wildfire sparked on the side of Limbert Mountain. Agassiz's fire chief says the second wildfire is burning on Bear Mountain, and it's being monitored under the direction of BC Hydro. He says the Agassiz Fire Department is working with BC Wildfire and contractors to keep the blazes under control. No word yet on what sparked the fires, but at least one is believed to have been human-caused. From a rare November forest fire to the snow on top of our mountains now, Grouse is the latest mountain to open up for ski season this year. And the mountain opened up today in the warm November sun for those looking for some early skiing and riding. Cypress opened last weekend ahead of schedule after seeing some early snow, and cold temperatures also allowed for snowmaking. Mount Seymour is scheduled to open December 9th. Now, opening day for Whistler Blackcomb is set for November 24th, but the mountains there have already seen plenty of snow. A new Museum of Vancouver exhibit is taking a critical look at this province's past and how some iconic delicacies in Chinatown almost vanished from our region. That's next. Thanks for staying with us on our commercial-free live stream. Well, a mural painted at a Nova Scotia elementary school has started a conversation with young students about the symbolism in painting. Colleen Jones caught up with the artist who taught the kids some techniques.
5 days, 2 classes a day, and 219 students helping them find their inner artist. It was a conversation around this painting that Quentin Syllaboy did at the entrance of Shubenacadie District Elementary. That prompted him to volunteer to come and teach the kids some art techniques.
I got in a conversation about doing painting workshops, and he's kind of put together a program that brings Indigenous art into our school.
Hey guys! As he carries the very heavy container packed with art supplies, the first hurdle to jump over was paying for all the paint and supplies. After approaching many businesses and getting a lot of rejections, he started fundraising on his own, quickly raising $7,000, and then came Tollgate.
Basically, on reserve, you can schedule a day and you just kind of stand there asking for donations just outside, and then people that drive by, they throw loose change at you and a couple dollars here and there. And then, like I said, yeah, it's $1,800.
Yes. How'd that make you feel?
Pretty good. Made me definitely proud of my community. And this is a butterfly. Yeah, go ahead.
Day one of his epic teaching sessions.
So in Native culture, it's a huge bird.
Then it's time to hand out the artist tools and paint. But there's one rule they all must follow.
You paint whatever you want today, as long as it means something to you.
There was some artist block, but flourish they did.
It's kind of like a paint slingshot. It like sprinkles, makes all the stars.
They would do
Quentin made his way around the room offering tips, high fives, and encouragement. Some who told him their work was bad soon saw the beauty.
Yeah, you came and told him it was bad.
Yeah, and then I wasn't happy with it, but then I kind of just added more stuff to it, and then I was happy with it.
A lot of times kids are so structured in their lives, they're told what to do from the second they get up to the second they go to bed. So to give them just that little bit of freedom and watch them run with it and watch them flourish is something that truly is inspiring and needed by them.
While Quentin was rejected by some businesses in his initial request to support this project, there has been a big turnaround. The Kiwanis Club is donating money. The Indian Brook Band did too, plus the Schools Plus program. So his volunteer program, that is beginning with one school, is going to grow, spreading his love of art and his culture to even more kids. Colleen Jones, CBC News, Shubenacadie.
If you're in the mood for some sweet, juicy char siu or a bite of roast duck, look no further than Vancouver's Chinatown. The neighborhood is home to some iconic Cantonese barbecue, but those delicacies almost vanished from our region after health officers tried to ban them in the mid-60s. A new Museum of Vancouver exhibit offers a look at our province's racist past.
It's pure and simple racism. Why they wanted to ban makes no sense, because there was reputedly 2 people who died of food poisoning in Tacoma, Washington, from barbecue meat that was not from a Chinese meat store. It was from a supermarket, and apparently it was chicken. Lighthead, Vancouver, da 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 da. This occurrence happened in '65 in Tacoma. Well, what was happening throughout Canada and the United States? The purposeful means to try and eliminate, quote unquote, what the city saw as blighted areas. And we all know that Chinatown wasn't just Chinatown. There was the Italian community there, the Black community. It was a cluster of marginalized peoples. And the Chinese were the largest population in that area. So there was a big fight. The Chinatown merchants came out in full force. There were allies in the community. There has been this thread throughout the history that, yes, Chinese are good laborers, but let's keep them in their place. Don't let them be successful. So we are fortunate to continue to have barbecue meats because of the good fight that happened.
You're looking at a time lapse of the chairlift at Cypress Mountain today. Johanna will have your full forecast next.
With the Olympic clock ticking down, a small protest group voices its opposition to the 2010 Games.
We're looking at $1 billion security bill for the Olympics.
Vancouver. 6 years ago, when it was announced that Vancouver had won the bid, supporters said the cost would be more than offset by the stimulus to BC's economy. But that was before the world economy went into a tailspin. This week, even the head of Vancouver's Olympic Committee, John Furlong, admitted staying on budget is their primary concern.
I never thought that I'd be sitting here saying that this may be one of the areas that the organizing committee gets most of its kudos from, is the fact that it managed the most complicated project in the world against this backdrop and pulled it off.
But with the Games still 6 months away, those kudos could be a little premature. You only have to look at history. Back in 1976, the mayor of Montreal was quoted as saying their Olympics could no more run a deficit than a man could have a baby. A quote that would haunt Jean Drapeau as Montreal spent decades paying off its debt. Calgary, on the other hand, boasted of a surplus in 1988. What happens in Vancouver may come down to luck.
I'd be amazed if we break even. I suspect we'll lose money.
I think we will benefit at the end of it all. We will recover most of the money that we are spending.
Worry about today, worry about tomorrow.
So far, the venues are finished, the Olympic Village is on target, and organizers say with scrimping and saving and partnering, it has stayed on budget. Furlong admits it's a challenge.
Well, I don't think any of us wanted what's happening, but at the same time, to use an athletic metaphor, I mean, we all like the victories that we grinded the hardest for.
But there is absolutely no wiggle room for error, last-minute expenditures, or corporate backouts. And there's still 6 months to go. Deborah Goebel, CBC News, Vancouver.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox. Join Kitsand journalist Angela Starrett as she uncovers land theft in Canada in the new CBC British Columbia original podcast, Land Back, out November 15th. And never miss a special programming series, event, or contest. Subscribe to CBC Vancouver's e-newsletter at cbc.ca/Vancouver Inbox and keep connected with us.
The weather update is brought to you by Direct Buy Furnace, installing the most reliable heating and cooling brand. It's hard to stop a train.
And senior meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe joins us now for a look at the weather. Joe, for people looking to lock in those weekend plans, what can we expect?
Changeable weather, Michelle. It's been cold and clear for the better part of the week, minus the fog in the morning. And now we're heading into increasing cloud and more moderate temperatures, shall we say. Here's the big picture on the satellite and radar, because you can sort of see our weekend laid out in the satellite picture. High pressure has been our story all week long, locking in that fog in the morning hours, but also bringing that Arctic chill through the morning hours and those beautiful blue skies. But this specific system is quickly approaching, bringing rain as we speak to Haida Gwaii. Now, it's going to take a little while to work its way down to the south coast, so places like Prince Rupert getting the brunt of that rain tomorrow. Tomorrow night, that'll push inland to Prince George. And then, as you can see, we sort of get the increasing cloud for Sunday, but for the most part, the moisture for the south coast hangs off until Monday. But at that point, it's an open door to Pacific systems between Monday and Sunday. So that 5-day stretch next week, we could actually see upwards of 100 millimeters for the south coast. Again, starting up in central coastal sections and then working its way down into Metro Vancouver. So a very different looking 7-day forecast. The afternoons are actually a touch cooler without those blue skies and direct sun rays in the afternoon, but the overnights much milder. So you can see there's a lot of rain out there, but you don't have to layer up in the mornings. Michelle, basically the complete opposite to what you were wearing last week. That's what you got to wear in the week coming up. Less layers, more rain gear.
Okay, we got it. All right, thanks, Jess.
You're welcome.
And that is your late news for Friday. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. For news anytime, visit cbc.ca/BC. Your next local news is on Radio 1 tomorrow morning at 6:30. Good night.